Hello there guys, thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Alex, you're watching the Alexander the Great YouTube channel, and today we're going to be talking about Radiohead, one of the most important rock bands of the last 30 years easily. I'm not the biggest fan of theirs, I have a great deal of respect, but I'm not one of these people that consider them maybe one of the best bands ever. So it's going to be a complicated ranking that I'm going to be delivering today in a tier list, and I'm probably going to be stirring up the pot a little bit with the fans. But yeah, before I get started, please, as always, if you're brand new, consider subscribing to the channel, where I talk about all sorts of similar bands like these in tier lists. If you like the content, of course, please consider liking the video as well. That helps me out a great deal. And then finally, of course, most importantly, please leave your thoughts in the comment sections below. Yeah, without further ado, let's get right down to my tier list. This is just the standard tier list on tiermaker.com. I would probably leave the tier list where it is because I don't really have a problem with how these tiers are: perfect, near perfect, less perfect, and so on. But yeah, let's get started on their first album. So 1993's Pablo Honey. People often say that there are two bad albums from Radiohead, one of which being their first. And some people say that it's their most boring, most unremarkable, least Radioheady album. While I consider that partially true, I think that it's the least Radiohead-like album that they ever put out. I actually have a great deal of respect for it. I think it's actually a really good album, and I don't put it down a peg because it's less Radioheady and not as experimental as they would become later. I would probably put Pablo Honey in about, let's say, B tier, less perfect, just because I think most songs on Pablo Honey are actually pretty damn good, and I'm not putting much weight on Creep. I don't consider that one even the best song on the album, really, and it's quite sad that Radiohead is still the Creep band on Spotify. I think most songs on Pablo Honey are at least as good as Creep, really. Maybe not as radio friendly or catchy. I'd say maybe there's one or two at the very end that kind of get a little bit weaker, but unlike some albums that we'll be talking about today, I think at least most of them are actually quite good. It's a pretty well-balanced album, pretty strong in that sense too. Just going through the songs just slightly. You, Creep, How Do You, Ripcord, Anyone Can Play Guitar, Vegetable, Blowout. Honestly, these songs are all pretty damn good. I'm not going to say they're best ever. I'm not even saying Creep's best ever. But it's a very well-paced, pretty moderate album because no song is bad other than maybe one, like I say. Like, honestly, they're all pretty good songs. Just because it's not very Radiohead, it's not very realized Radiohead yet, doesn't make it a bad album. And a lot of people try and convince you about that, but don't believe that propaganda. I definitely think Pablo Honey is a good album. Don't listen to the people that tell you that Pablo Honey is one of their worst albums. Don't listen to that. So, yeah, I'm going to put Pablo Honey in B. I'm going to continue referring to these tiers as letters. I'm doubtlessly going to be doing that just off of instinct. But yeah, but if you like rock, if you like alternative rock, grunge, Britpop, and that sort of stuff, I see no reason to think this is a bad album at all. Let's keep moving. So, 1995's The Bends. A lot of people tend to give this album a bit more credit, a little bit more fairness, I'd say, versus Pablo Honey. But for me, I would consider this one either their best or at least one of the best albums they ever made. Really just because every single song, maybe other than like one or so, maybe Bulletproof isn't the best, but yeah, most songs on this are kind of the best songs they ever wrote, in my opinion. It's a really well-flowing album, really well-paced. There's just everything to hype, everything to praise, really, about The Bends. It's not that Radioheady, once again. It's not as experimental, not very artistic, but just on the merit of the songs, best of their whole discography, or one of their best. If I were to write a Radiohead greatest hits collection, a lot of the greatest hits going to come straight from The Bends, really. It's still very 90s flavour, just like Pablo Honey, but I think they lean into that. I don't think they lean too far into it. It's still very much Radiohead. Honestly, I just love The Bends so much. I think it's, in a technical sense, probably an underrated Radiohead album, really, because a lot of people will put it sort of in the middle of the road, and that's, like I say, more fair than what they do often with Pablo Honey. The Bends doesn't get enough credit. I think The Bends is one of their best ever, and it needs to be recognised as such, so I'm going to put it right up into the S tier, or perfect, in this list. Moving along, we've got 1997 with OK Computer. A lot of people will say that OK Computer is either their best or one of their best, and I completely agree with that. I hate to be a boring cliche ranker here, but honestly, OK Computer is such a breakthrough album for them, and I think that while The Bends, it was as though every song was great, but it wasn't really albumy. It didn't feel very matched up or holistic. Whereas with OK Computer, it's as though it has that kind of formula and blueprint, but it seems a lot more intentional, a lot more cohesive, and a lot more artistic as well. Whether or not I would say it's better than the Bends or worse than the Bends is actually quite difficult. I'm not sure if it has as many fantastic tracks. It's got some tracks that are a lot more memorable anyway. What I'm going to do, actually, because I just love the Bends, it's more of a nostalgic album for me. I mean, they both are, but what I'm going to do is actually keep them where they are for the moment. I may return to them later in this video, because I do feel like maybe OK Computer just has a bit more sophistication, a bit more richness to it because of the whole concept that it follows. But just because I just love the Bends so much, it's less of a creative album versus OK Computer, but I just have such a sweetness to it. I have such a soft spot for the Bends, so who knows? I may come back to this, but honestly, they're both great in their both ways. I just maybe more emotionally have a connection with the Bends. OK Computer is probably the pinnacle and height of Radiohead's creativity, and I know that's going to sound quite bizarre given what's coming next, but I just think it's matching both creative quality with good songs. I think sometimes they experiment a little bit too hard, and it does come with the threat and risk of delivering some songs that don't quite hit, whereas with OK Computer it's like you've got the goodness of the Bends quality wise, mostly anyway, and you've got a great concept album underneath it, sort of underpinning it. I'm talking about the tracks very briefly. Airbag's alright. Airbag's okay. Paranoid Android's one of the best they've made. Letdown's alright. Subterranean Hoodsick Alien. I always get that one confused with Bob Dylan, but Subterranean, great song. Electioneering, good song as well. Fantastic track. Potentially the best song they've ever written is No Surprises. And as well, the last song on this album, I'm trying to remember the name of it, because I don't have the song list in front of me. I'm going to forget it. But yeah, last song on the album is incredibly strong. In my head, going through all the tracks on OK Computer, they are a lot more emotive. They do a lot more expressing versus the Bends, which does have some emotive quality. It's just not really as deep. So yeah, I think really, I'm starting to convince myself. I think I'm going to have to betray the Bends as much as I'm fond of it in favour of OK Computer. Because honestly, I think the reason for why OK Computer often tops lists is because it's just everything good about Radiohead. It's the artistic greatness, it's the great songs, the deepness and the emotional expression, concept album as well. It's just, yeah, it's basically their perfect album, really. I'll probably keep OK Computer there as my final answer. It's very difficult, but yeah, they're both great. They're both perfect, but OK Computer just has the edge. Okay, let's just move on. So next we've got 2000's Kid A. A lot of fans do give this one a lot of praise. For the longest time, I would say, I didn't really see the hype for Kid A, and that was because I was really enveloped by a lot of the rock, the alternative rock. And it seemed like they just kind of unfairly canned most of that with what came next, because ultimately the formula of Kid A is kind of the Radiohead playbook. Like, they kind of played to this kind of musical style, and fair enough to them. It's really, really unique, very of their flavour, really, really original and creative. Do I think it's as good as OK Computer? I don't consider it as good, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's great. You do have to sort of dial into it, you have to sort of tune your mind and your ears to its station, so to speak, in order to really enjoy it. Because for me, I was tuned to OK Computer for the longest time, and the Bends, and I didn't really appreciate it for a long time. But with time, I did sweeten to it. In terms of where I'd place it, I would probably put it near perfect. As an album as well, the track list is pretty much as perfect as it gets in terms of this kind of Radiohead. The album itself just feels very intentional. It just feels like it has purpose. It feels like every song is a piece of a wider puzzle, really. I don't think there's anything random and weird about it. Obviously, there's a lot of weirdness to OK Computer. It's just really enjoyable to listen to from start to finish in ways that I could never say about so many Radiohead albums. It was experimental and it broke the mold, but I don't think it's great just for the sake of that. I just think it's a great album that flows brilliantly. The individual tracks themselves, while I would definitely recommend listening to them one after the next up until the end, there are some greatest hits for me in Kid A, like How to Disappear Completely. But those first two tracks, flowing from one to the next, are just sublime. I absolutely adore Everything in Its Right Place, flowing into Kid A. National Anthem is a bit of a quirky track, one of the maybe weaker ones on the album, but it still flows really well. Idioteque is great, In Limbo is okay, Tree Fingers is a lovely ambient track. They do a lot of ambient tracks in their discography that often really just don't feel very purposeful and don't really continue the flow. But in this case, Tree Fingers absolutely does. Tree Fingers just sounds like the album cover for me, and that album cover is an absolute work of art. Probably their best album cover as well. Motion City soundtrack. These are all quite good songs. I wouldn't say the quality of the average track is as good as the Bends or as OK Computers, unfortunately. But as a piece, as an LP, as a start to finish listen, this is a really strong Radiohead album. It's not easy listening though, unfortunately. The other albums, anyone can really get into that. If you like rock music, then you'll enjoy OK Computer and the Bends. You may not enjoy Kid A at all though. That's the sad thing about OK Computer. You really do need to dial into it slightly. And it will either hit or it won't hit. For me, it didn't at all hit at first, but it did eventually. So New Creation, Kid, and the first of its kind, A. It is Kid A, therefore. It is a great Kid A of their next chapter of their career. Radiohead, Kid A, not perfect, but it's a damn solid album. So I'm going to move on. Next, we've got Amnesiac, what some people call Kid B. So just for some context, as some Radiohead fans obviously going to know, Amnesiac is really just the songs that weren't included in Kid A. They were the ones recorded in the Kid A sessions but didn't make it onto the album. And I'm not saying that as criticism, I'm just saying that as a matter of fact. This is basically the same band, the same energies that led to Kid A, but probably didn't flow for a Kid A album. So yeah, they got left off. And these made it to another album, really. Whether or not I think it's as good as Kid A, though, that's a different story. I think Amnesiac has some damn good tracks. The Pyramid Song, Life in a Glass House, Knives Out as well. That's a good one. I Might Be Wrong's alright. You and Whose Army is alright. There's a lot of alright songs, but there's also a lot of really bad songs too. And this is actually the first Radiohead album that actually has some songs that I would genuinely consider pretty damn bad. Like you've got the first track. The first track is okay, but some people would maybe even say it's quite bad, and I would understand why they would. It just seems quite aimless. A lot of the songs that I'm going to be talking about here, they do not flow, and this is the thing. It almost makes Amnesiac as an album not really feel like an album as such, but more like a compilation of random songs that do not flow and fit that well together. More on that. You've got Hunting Bears and Polk. That's another interlude, another weak song too. Trying to remember the other songs. I'm not going to look at the track list. I'm just trying to try and remember what I can. But yeah, there's a lot of songs that just don't flow that great. The leftover songs on Kid A were either flawless and some of the best they ever made, like the Pyramid Song, or it was just this sort of series of detour, almost interlude-like tracks that felt absolutely disconnected. There's a lot of tracks as well on this that just feel like duds. So I think this is the first Radiohead album that I wouldn't consider very good. I think there's some really good songs, but the album just doesn't flow. It just feels incredibly disjointed. It's actually one of the most disjointed albums they've got, or maybe even the most. The songs just don't fit. For better or worse, it doesn't feel like an album, and for that it suffers. So I'll probably put it in still alright for the sake of the great songs that I've listed, but yeah, as a whole album, a lot of songs are really bad. A lot of songs are really good. There's no flow, therefore. There's no continuing structure or narrative going on that you can feel or pick up. So yeah, Amnesiac has layers of greatness and layers of dreadfulness, and in that way, I'm gonna have to score it somewhere. And still all right, for the sake of some brilliant tracks, I think it's pretty good and pretty fair. You can take on that what you want. I think some great songs, though, aren't going to save an album overall. So yeah, moving on. We've got 2003's Hail to the Thief. So before I place this one, I will give a bit of thought. So a lot of people consider this album another rather weaker album overall in the grand scheme of things, because it's got 14 tracks and it kind of feels therefore like a double album. A lot of different flavors going on as well. Some flavorings from their rockier stuff, some flavorings from the sort of Kid A and Amnesiac side of things as well. So some people would kind of score that as a negative, as though that's sort of a lack of consistency. Some people say the flow isn't great as well. They kind of say that there's a lot of weirdness going on and not a lot of stuff that adds to the overall picture of this album. As for what I think, number one, I don't think it's bloated. I think there's a lot of songs, but I think that, you could in theory trim up the album slightly. You could groom it a little bit and maybe it would be better. But I don't think it's itching for a shortening. I think the length's alright. I don't think the length hurts it too much. And number two, I think the flow of Hail to the Thief is okay. I don't think it's a weak flow. I think it's not like Amnesiac. Although stylistically, I think it's closer to Amnesiac in terms of flow. And even closer to Amnesiac in style than anything else. Kid A, Benz, OK Computer, and so on. So really, what would I think about the songs and how would I think about the album overall? So the songs are actually better overall than, let's say, the average track score when it comes to Amnesiac. In terms of the flow, though, I definitely think that everything else, bar Amnesiac, is a better flow. Again, nothing to do with the song length, it's just the styles that are just all over the place, really, when it comes to Hail to the Thief, are both good and also bad. So I will try my best in terms of remembering the songs. 2+2, one of the best songs they ever wrote, and it's a fan favourite for a very clear reason. It's just an absolute banger of an opener for this album, and I love it for that. Number 2, Sit Down, Stand Up, or Stand Up, Sit Down. Another great track. Sail to the Moon is just okay. Backdrifts kind of feels like a proto 15 step, which comes next in Rainbows. I think it's an okay song. And then you've got We Suck Young Blood. I've probably got the wrong order, but yeah, We Suck Young Blood is a weird song. Feels a little bit like Life in a Glass House. I like the mood that it sets, but it's not a brilliant track, unfortunately. There was alright. It's just a good song. I like that sort of paranoid androidy acoustic flavour that they bring. Gloaming's okay. I can see why some people think that Gloaming's a bit of a pointless track, and in a way it is, because it's not. It's just kind of another bit of a vocal detour that doesn't really stand up very well musically, but it sort of still flavours and colours this album. I'm going to kind of mix up the order here. So you've got Myxomatosis, it's alright. You've got I Will, which is very melancholic, while it sort of adds to the overall picture of the album and adds to that picture in a sort of more minor, a bit more of a glum and sad way. I don't think it's a brilliant track as well. Kind of feels like You and Who's Army from Amnesiac, which I don't think is a brilliant song. It's a song. It's a song. Punch Up at a Wedding it's alright. It's not brilliant, but it's okay. And then finally you've got Wolf at the Door, which I think is one of the better songs on the album. Wolf at the Door as well, it's another one of those We Suck Young Blood or Life in a Glass House sort of songs. Really emotive and brings about a lot of feelings, but do I think it's a brilliant track for that reason alone? Not quite. So these 14-ish tracks in total, I think mesh quite well together, but I don't think the flow, owing to the length of the album, 14 songs, is quite as strong as something like The Benz, OK Computer, or Kid A. I think it's much better, clearly, in my mind, than Amnesiac. It's got that same sort of Amnesiac problem in the case that it's a lot of good songs with some bad songs. It's not flowing like good song, good song, good song. It's sort of great, good, bad, great, good, that sort of thing. But I think it's stronger. It brings a lot more listenable songs, really, than Amnesiac did. So in that case, while I still think Pablo Honey is better, because I just enjoy Pablo Honey a lot, and I like their 90s flavour a little bit more than Hail to the Thief. But I still think Hail to the Thief is a decent album, and there's not a whole lot I can really say that hurts Hail to the Thief so much. I just think that on the balance of things, there are better Radiohead albums. There's certainly worse Radiohead albums like Amnesiac. But on the balance of the flow, in terms of the ratio of bangers and great songs compared to other albums, it's not quite as good. But I do enjoy it. It feels a bit like a Radiohead White album. I don't love the Beatles White album, unfortunately, so that's probably a terrible comparison, but it's a lot of sides of Radiohead thrown into one album in one space, and it doesn't actually do that bad for it. So yeah, I could talk more, I could talk on, but honestly, Hail to the Thief, in a word, is diverse. It's good, it's not too scatterbrained, it's not that muddled and fidgety. I think it feels quite deliberate and on a course, but it's a bit of a bumpy course still. It's not quite as smooth sailing as something like Kid A. So I'm going to put it in less perfect. Good album, but it's not a great album, it's just good. Yeah, if that makes any sense. Next we've got In Rainbows in 2006 or 7. So once again, I'm going to talk about my thoughts and then I'm going to place it in the tiers. So this is definitely one of the fan favourites. Most people will say that this is either their best or one of their best. You'll see this scoring pretty high in most lists. I think it's definitely a strong album. Most tracks are pretty good. Actually, no, I'll go further. I'll say all the tracks in Rainbows, we're talking about disc 1, in Rainbows, are good. There's nothing skippy. There's all sorts of good songs on In Rainbows. The one thing that I have against it, which will kind of contextualize my placement, is I don't think there's a single track anywhere in Rainbows that's one of their greatest hits, unfortunately. And I think, basically, that's the first time I'm saying that. Because at least in Amnesiac, you had 2 songs that I consider some of their masterpieces, like Pyramid Song and Life in a Glass House. In Hail to the Thief, you've got at least 2+2, and Wolf at the Door, even. In Kid A, you've got How to Disappear Completely. In the Benz, you've kind of got all the songs, I hate to say it. And on OK Computer, you've got most songs, especially No Surprises and Paranoid Android. But when I think of the best song on In Rainbows, it's not a song that's definitely a greatest hit in my head. I think every song is really good and flows really well in the company that it keeps. 15 Steps great, Weird Fishes is great, Nude is great, Reckoner's pretty good, House of Cards is pretty good, Videotape potentially could be the best song on the album. But again, I don't consider these songs like the best they ever wrote. I think that it's a really strong album owing to the fact that all the songs are good and all the songs flow really well together. But I just think that's kind of an average sort of score, really, unfortunately. So it's better than Pablo Honey, which is another album which I think has basically all good songs, but is it as vibey and as ambient as Kid A? Maybe not. I want to really choose my placement and my choice of words quite carefully here. I think I'm going to probably put it about here. The songs, all songs on In Rainbows, are just good or okay, or I could say great at their best. Like Videotape's a great song, I'd say. All I Need is maybe another great song, but again, I'm being very generous. Like there's no 2+2 or Paranoid Android anywhere in Rainbows. But really, as a album, it's an extremely well written, well thought out album. And I just have to praise it for that. I think really, this is clearly one of their better albums, for sure. Whether or not I consider it a favourite of mine, that's a bit different, unfortunately. I think there's not much more I can add to this. So In Rainbows is a great flow, a great song selection, and I think they crafted In Rainbows really very well. I just think that these highs aren't in the stratosphere, they're not in the sky like they are often in most of their albums, bar a few, but that's the problem. Like I say, if I'm going to have to say that it loses some points because it doesn't have like a greatest hit, in my head anyway, in my selections, that will be ultimately where it falls. Great album, great solid album, but there's some weaknesses that it will have, and in that case I'm going to have to put it in less perfect or near perfect for this reason. So let's move on. Next we've got King of Limbs in 2011. This is that second album that a lot of fans will say is a bad album, accompanied by Pablo Honey, which I consider a great album. Does that mean that I consider The King of Limbs a great album as well? Oh no. So I really, really wanted to like and enjoy The King of Limbs, in the case that I've listened to it countless times thinking, what am I missing? Because some Radiohead fans will think it's one of few underrated classics and some hidden gems of their back catalogue. As for me, I never found that gem. All I found were just a bunch of muddled, higgledy-piggledy, loopy songs that felt really aimless together. There was nothing that I could sort of look to with sort of a twitch in my eye thinking, well, yeah. There was just nothing really that I could remember much about King of Limbs. I mean, we all remember that dance in Lotus Flower, but I don't remember a great song accompanying it, unfortunately. Bloom just felt very confused, as did Hello Mr. Magpie. I have listened to In Rainbows and King of Limbs, the live version in the Basement Club in London, I think that's what it's called. But sadly, that didn't really change my view of either album, really. I like In Rainbows, I've said that already, but I think that The King of Limbs basically is properly rated. I don't think it's underrated at all. In fact, I'm going to say it deserves every bit of hatred it gets, because there's not really any redemption anywhere. There's no one song is good sort of feeling in the back of my head. All the songs are just weird and wonky, not weird and wonderful. I don't look at it as an underdog that deserves a bit of hyping, unfortunately. I just think that it's clearly a weaker album that, you know, it happened. It's an album that they put out, and here it is. And it scores, and it scores consistently quite bad in most people's rankings. So without talking your ears off, I just think that, yeah, King Limbs deserves most of its lack of praise, really. I think it's clearly the worst album they've ever put out. There's just nothing good about it, so it gets very much bottom of the list for that reason. And then finally, we've got 2016's A Moon-Shaped Pool. So once again, I'll talk a little bit about my feelings about Moon-Shaped Pool, and then I'm going to place it. This one, just like King Limbs, I really wanted to love it. I remember when Burn the Witch came out, I remember thinking, oh god, they've come out with a new single, they've come out with a new music video, let's put it on. And I just thought it was alright. I just thought it was okay. It was clearly a very political, very thoughtful track, so I appreciated that side of it. Whether I thought it was a great Radiohead track, I couldn't really say. But I do remember Daydreaming being really good. Like, that song was really quite vibrant. I love the atmosphere as well between Daydreaming and Deck's Dark. Like, the flow there, you could even say including Burn the Witch, is really, really good. I think the flow and the energies that they were bringing with those first three songs, and I think with the order of the track list as well, I think that what they're doing quite well so far. So yeah, first track's pretty good actually. And then it gets to a point sort of in the middle, I think with Desert Island Discs, I'm just trying to think, which is an alright song, and it kind of continues the flow. Somewhat between that and some songs towards the end, the flow gets a little bit broken off in my head. I can't remember exactly where, but definitely the further towards the end you get, the more in my head the flow is a bit broken off, unfortunately. So first half of the album flows really well. Identity Kit is good. I like that song. The Numbers is probably the best song on the album, and I would even say that's greatest hits material right there, in a way that even Burn the Witch isn't. Present Tense, as I remember a lot of people thinking that was one of, one of these all-time classic Radiohead tracks, and I just didn't see it. I just considered it a bit of a longer I Will or You and Whose Army. It just seemed like that kind of Radiohead song, which has a point and has a purpose and has a mood and has a feel, but I don't really appreciate it so much. Like, there's better out there that does that. Some people think that's quite a weird, almost offensive thing to say, but yeah, I just think that the further in you go towards the end, the weaker it does become. And you've got a few other albums as well, like True Love Waits. I think there's another song that I've probably forgotten, but yeah, really just to stress that same point. The first half of the album is actually really good, but I think it's definitely weaker the more you get in towards that halfway point and beyond. So where would I put it? I would probably put it about there. I really enjoy certain tracks. Like, I really enjoy The Numbers. I really enjoy Daydreaming. I really like Deck's Dark, and to an extent Identity Kit. But the flow, I just think, is quite weak overall as an album, and some people would completely disagree with me. Vehemently so. But yeah, I think towards the end, that flow just sort of disjoints and fails to return, really. I definitely don't consider it a bad album at all. I think it's a generally quite good album, and I really enjoy it versus Amnesiac. I think there's a bit of inconsistency that both this and Amnesiac share, but nowhere near as bad. Amnesiac is very inconsistent feeling and sounding to me, whereas with Moon-Shaped Pool, there's a lot more intentionality that I can pick up upon, but I just feel that intentionality is definitely only strong and as present as that at the very beginning. I'm hoping that people out there in the Radiohead land will see me on that. Maybe they won't. So the first half of the album, if I was only scoring it on the first half, I'd probably place it like here. But otherwise, because of that lack of flow, unfortunately I'm just going to probably put it around about there. Because once again, the strength of the songs itself, it's not the highest in the world. Like I say, I love one song, but the other songs are just fine. It kind of has that sort of In Rainbows quality to it. Because A lot of the songs are just okay. There's only one song that I would generally say is not great, the one I've listed there, but I mean, potentially even True Love Waits. There's just a few songs, like I say, towards the end that just don't bring anything really, and all they really do is hurt the album in my head. So yeah, overall it's a quite good album, but it's definitely not as good as In Rainbows, unfortunately. It has the same kind of trajectory at the beginning as In Rainbows, but as for its strength in the listing, it's going to be something like that, because Hail to the Thief, just because it's got the strength of numbers as well, it has, like I say, a similar kind of consistency, because even though it's kind of all over the place, it has a kind of joined up picture that it's following. The track is a bit of a wonky track, whereas with A Moon-Shaped Pool, it's like a straight track and then suddenly isn't. That's kind of how I feel. Yeah, so that rounds off my list. So in a sense, it's probably quite a predictable list. Some of the take-homes, some of the takeaways. Number one, Pablo Honey is nowhere near as bad as a lot of people tend to say it is. And I think a lot of people need to sort of get out of that headspace. I think people need to sort of broaden their mind in a way, because Pablo Honey, it's still Radiohead. It's still Radiohead. It's still early incubated Radiohead that will ultimately form into something else later. But it's still Radiohead. It's all Radiohead at its core. Yeah, of course, it's not quite as good as something like the Bends, but it's not bad. It's definitely not bad. And I definitely think number two, that King of Limbs is pretty much as bad as a lot of people would let you know that it is. There's a few fans that definitely disagree with that, but I think most people will agree with me to say that it's quite a weak album for all the right reasons. A lot of those albums like Hail to the Thief and Amnesiac, that sort of middle period, I've probably rated those pretty much as fair as I could. I think definitely there are some highlights, but they suffer from lack of consistency in a way that Kid A and In Rainbows definitely don't. And once again, I would definitely say that In Rainbows and Kid A aren't as good as maybe the Bends, just because the Bends has some of their best songs, just like OK Computer has some of their best songs and best flow. So yeah, there's not a whole lot more I can say now. So yeah, I'm going to let that tier list speak for itself as I round off this video. So yeah, that concludes the video today, guys. Once again, if you're new, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you did enjoy this video, of course, please give it a thumbs up as well. That would really help me out. And finally, as always, please leave your thoughts in the comment sections below. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for getting to the end as well. Peace. Signing off.